Hey now, welcome to 3x5. It's a YouTube show. I'm on YouTube now. Yes, they let ugly, fat Italians on YouTube. I've been hiding my face behind the microphone for years with the Sportscasters podcast, 24-inch podcast. But my friends at the North-South Connection said, we desperately need you on YouTube. So here I am, 3x5 with Steve Bennett. Each week, 3 lists, each one sponsored. We're going to do a sports list every week, sponsored by the Sportscasters podcast. We're going to do a wrestling list every week, sponsored by the 24-inch podcast. We're going to do a pop culture podcast every week, sponsored by the North-South Connection. We'll tell you about each list as we get through each one, but it's going to be a top 5. 3 lists by 5 each, 3x5 with Steve Bennett. That's the show. That's the premise. We're going to do it about three a month or so, something like that. I don't know the exact frequency, but I will definitely be tweeting about them at sports_casters, and you can find out when they're available. Also, I'll probably post them on my Instagram at sportscasters there as well. I want to thank everyone at the North-South Connection. I want to thank Justin, Ryan, everyone who's helped me put this together, Aaron, all the people behind the scenes with the North-South Connection. Thank you for welcoming me to your page. All right, with that said, let's do it. Let's get started. The first ever list in the history of 3x5 is going to be sponsored by the Sportscasters podcast. The latest episode is available where you listen to podcasts. It features interviews with Joshua Robinson and Michael Thompson. Let's start out by the top 5 Stanley Cup Finals since 1993. That's a weird year. Why 1993? 1993 Stanley Cup Finals was won by the Montreal Canadiens. They beat the Los Angeles Kings. And that was the last time the Stanley Cup was won by a team from Canada. Now, Canada has been wrecking my whole week with their wildfires and the soot and the air quality. Canada's ruined my week. So I wanted to highlight their inability to win a Stanley Cup since 1993. Now, I graduated from high school in 1998. Now, I know that was 25 years ago. So if I subtract 1998 from 1993, I believe I get 5. And if I add 5 to 25, that means it's been 30 years since the Stanley Cup has been in Canada. So what have been the top 5 finals since then? Let's start with number 5. 2004, there was a Canadian team involved in this one. The Calgary Flames lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning. There they are. Dave Andreychuk wins the cup in 7 games. Interesting thing about this cup, about this Stanley Cup, the most exciting part about it. So Calgary is up 3-2 with the home game, a game in Calgary, and it goes to overtime. So at any point, if Calgary scores, the streak is over, the cup goes back to Canada. Calgary has their first cup since they won it in 1989, but Tampa Bay wins that game, forces it home, Game 7, 2-0. The last Stanley Cup for 2 years, by the way, as the 2005 Cup was not played due to the lockout. Number 4, 2010, the Chicago Blackhawks over the Philadelphia Flyers in 6 games. This one was decided in overtime in 6 games. Buffalo, New York native Patrick Kane scored the Stanley Cup winning goal. A really strange play where he's coming down the wall on the left side and he flings the puck to the net. And even the great Doc Emmerich didn't quite get the call. It didn't look like the people didn't really know what happened to the puck. Patrick Kane knew he threw his hands up and skated down the ice, but there was really no reaction in the rink. Everyone in Philadelphia was confused. Broadcasters were confused, but Patrick Kane slid the puck in. The first cup the Blackhawks have won in years and years and years to end their long drought. And the first of 3 that Taves and Kane win. Of course, a new era of Blackhawks hockey will start soon when they draft first overall this year and pick Connor Bedard. But this was the one for them, an overtime winning Stanley Cup goal by Patrick Kane, Buffalo, New York native. Number 3, Chicago again when they beat the Boston Bruins in 6 games in 2013. An incredible 6th game as Boston looked like they were going to force a Game 7 and send it back to Chicago. They're up 2-1 late in the game. Chicago pulls the goalie and scores 2-2. Okay, well, Boston will take it to overtime, regroup. Maybe, it's still time to win. Bergeron can get a goal or Marchand or whoever. But then the Blackhawks score again instantly and just stun my friend Peter Winston and everyone in the Garden, and the Blackhawks win the cup. They'd win one more when they defeated Tampa Bay in 2015. We'll see what happens in the Bedard era. Number 2, 2001, and actually today as we record, I don't know what this day will go up, but as we record, it's the anniversary. 22 years ago today, Ray Bourque got his Stanley Cup. Now, here's an interesting thing. It was the 22nd year of his career. So today, we are as close to the end of Ray Bourque's career as on that night Ray Bourque was to the beginning of it. 22 years ago, Game 7, the Colorado Avalanche beat the New Jersey Devils. Really a fantastically played series, back and forth with the drama and the backdrop of, would Ray Bourque get a cup? And we got the picture there. Thanks to Ryan for finding that from Sports Illustrated as at long last, Raymond Bourque held up the cup. I believe it was Alex Tanguay scored 2 goals in overtime. The Avalanche were really doing a great job at this moment of kind of turning around their team. They had been years led by Sakic and Forsberg, and of course they still were, but they had rookies on this team like Chris Drury, who later became a star here in Buffalo, and Alex Tanguay on the roster, and they win that cup there. They're second since landing in Colorado. Of course, they won also in 96 on a Uwe Krupp goal and triple overtime against the Panthers, who are in the cup right now. And actually last night, as we tape, got their first ever win. Now, number 1 is a no-brainer. 1994, the New York Rangers over the Vancouver Canucks. No more 1940. For years, the Rangers were taunted by fans, opposition fans, with the words 1940. That was the last time the Rangers had won a cup. The drought was up to 54 years. Now, in 1992, they won the President's Trophy and flamed out in the playoffs. 93, they didn't make it at all. They fired their coach. They bring in Mike Keaton. Keaton comes, and with Mark Messier, a lot of people will call this team the New York Oilers. They had a lot of former Oilers players like Craig McTavish and Messier. But, of course, their core of players like Brian Leetch and Mike Richter, two U.S. superstars there. And Alex Kovalev was a rookie that year. And this series was unbelievable. 7 games. Rangers went up 3-1. Backtracking even. Canucks steal game 1 in the Garden. 50-plus saves by Kirk McLean. They go up 1-0. Rangers win game 2. They go to Vancouver. Game 3, Pavel Bure scores in a breakaway in the first minute and then is ejected like 4 minutes later for high sticking inadvertently Jay Wells. But the rules back then were if you draw blood on a high stick, you're 5 in a game out. He was trying to lift the stick, hit Wells in the face. He's out. Bure's out. Rangers win. The next night is the famous night where Bure gets a penalty shot against Richter. Richter makes a save. Rangers win. Go home. Now 3-1. One more game. No more 1940. The cup is in the building. $7,000 tickets outside the building. Everyone's ready for the Rangers to win the cup that night. Vancouver goes up 3-0. Rangers tie it. 3-3. Third period. Place is rocking. No more 1940. Canucks score 3 goals, force a game 7, which the Rangers eventually win a few days later. After losing game 6 in Vancouver, they win game 7 and end the streak. Now, as we stand today, the new 1940 is 1967, which is the last time the Toronto Maple Leafs won a Stanley Cup. They ended the series win drought this year, but not the Stanley Cup drought. The 1994 playoffs are the best playoffs of my lifetime. I was a huge Pavel Bure fan. He was amazing that summer, and a huge Rangers fan too. They beat Washington, they beat New Jersey, they beat the Islanders, and then they beat the Rangers. Of course, the 7-game series, Rangers-Devils in the Eastern Conference Finals, the best of my lifetime. 7 games, 2 double overtime games, won by Stefan Matteau. So that's the list. Top 5 Stanley Cups since 1993, 2004, 2010, 2013, 2001, and 1994. All right, let's move on. List number 2. We'll go to wrestling. This list, of course, is brought to you by the 24-Inch Podcast. I do the 24-Inch Podcast with my daughter, Paula, and my friend Hollywood Dave Rollins. And what we do each week is we take a match or a moment from Hulk Hogan's career, and we break down the card. We read the news from when that match occurred. So Like our latest episode was the November of 1991 house show at Madison Square Garden, the first time Hulk and Ric Flair wrestled in the New York promotion in the Garden. And so that we read the news from November of 1991, give you a feel for the era. It's a really fun nostalgia podcast, which Paula dominates. And how no one more about Hulk Hogan than Hollywood Dave. And, you know, I just try not to ruin it. But in honor of wrestling, you know, I was thinking about this time. I want these lists to be timely. You know, I want them to make sense. Like it's the Stanley Cup Finals. Do a Stanley Cup final list. It's also the time of the year where kids are done with school. Kids are leaving school. And I think back to my childhood. And I had a good childhood. But often was home alone or home with my brothers. And what did we do to entertain ourselves? We rented a lot of wrestling movies. We would go to Wegmans or Blockbuster, and I would look the whole time. My mom and my great-grandmother, God bless her, Grandma Xenia, were grocery shopping. I would just be lining. I'd take the videos off the shelf. I'd line them up on the ground. I'd look at the backs. They're the same videos they had the last week. I do it every week, pick out my videos. Tonight, the top 5 Coliseum Home videos that I rented as a kid from Wegmans. Number 5, Hulkamania 3. During this era, they would put out Hulkamania videos. I think they did 6 of them. And Hulkamania 3 was the one I rented the most because it reminded me of WrestleMania 3, which is always my favorite. And it had Hogan and Andre on the cover, as you can see here. And I love this video, a really fun one that I would rent all the time when I was in the mood just to watch Hulk matches, which was often because I'm a big Hulk fan. Number 4, WrestleMania 2. Here's the thing about this one. This is the last WrestleMania before I watched them all live. So I didn't see WrestleMania 2 until I rented it. And they always would get me with the box on this one. I just always thought it looked so beautiful. The WrestleMania 2, as you can see on the screen, but the back too. I would read off these matches and I would be like, oh my God, the Bulldogs wrestled for the tag title. I got to rent that. All right, number 3, WrestleFest 88. Okay, this is one I rented for a few reasons. One, what the hell is WrestleFest? I didn't know, but it looks awesome. There's 1 billion people there. Number 2, Hogan is wrestling Andre in a cage? Holy shit. I got to get that. I got to rent that. And I always rented the WrestleFest tapes because I didn't know what this WrestleFest was, but I wanted to go to WrestleFest. I went to WrestleMania 6 as a kid, but I wanted to find WrestleFest. I wanted to go to that. I always rented WrestleFest 88 because I could watch Hulk and Andre in a cage. And look at how cool Bret Hart looks on the cover there, too. Awesome stuff. Love that tape. Number 2, the Royal Rumble 1990. Now, this could really be Royal Rumble 89. It could be Royal Rumble 91. It could be Royal Rumble 92. I love to rent the Royal Rumbles because the Royal Rumble match was always so fun, and it was always an hour at a time. So I knew I had that whole hour to focus in on it. And me and my brothers would get really involved in making bets and stuff on who the next guy was going to be. And I was always way older than them, so I was better at remembering from week to week who was next. So I would always like really want to bet a lot when I knew for sure that like Macho Man was number 13 and was coming out next or whatever. So I always ripped my brothers off and won the bets. But we would love watching Royal Rumbles. This was probably when I would bring a Royal Rumble home. I'd be like, hey, bros, I got a Royal Rumble today. And we would always watch it. They liked wrestling too, not as much as me, but they always loved to watch the Royal Rumble. Now, number 1, WrestleMania 4. Look it, I will admit I was pretty smart, but also apparently not very smart because I would rent WrestleMania 4 every time because I couldn't resist that it was 2 tapes and they charged the same amount for it. So in my head, it was like, well, all right, I can get 1 tape for $3 or I could get 2 tapes for $6, but that'll actually be 3 tapes, more wrestling. So I rented WrestleMania 4 so many times. it was always such a pleasure to watch it. I love the Battle Royal at the beginning, which I think is underrated. I love Brett smashing the thing. And in my earliest wrestling podcasts, I would rebook for myself on notebook paper how the tournament should have went. So I would change things like, oh, Steamboat should have won, so we could add Steamboat Savage too. And that's what I would do. I'd watch the tournament. And I watched the main event a million times. But it came in 2 tapes, damn it. Why wouldn't you rent a tape that's 2? I can get my mom to spend $6. I can take 3 tapes home instead of 2. Boom. Did it all the time. That's my top 5 most rented Coliseum Home videos. Hulkamania 3, WrestleMania 2, WrestleFest 88, Royal Rumble 90, and WrestleMania 4. All right. What's up next? The Pop Culture List, sponsored by the North-South Connection. Listen, before I start this one, I can't thank the good people at the North-South Connection enough for having me on their YouTube channel. They've built this to what it is with their own blood, sweat, and tears. And the thought of starting my own from scratch and all that, it was daunting. And I would have never done it. But thanks to Justin and Aaron and Ryan and Toolman and whoever else that I'm not naming that's responsible for having me here. Thank you for that. And they're going to sponsor the Pop Culture List every week. And today, since it's summertime, I thought of the Summer Blockbuster movie. And when I was growing up, the Summer Blockbuster movie was such a big deal. I mean, whatever the main one was, the toys were in the Happy Meals, and the posters were everywhere. And I went to a Summer Blockbuster this year for the first time in a long time. I went with my daughter, hi Paula, to Super Mario Brothers. And it was a lot of fun. It really was. We went in 4D, which I didn't like because it felt like I was on like a roller coaster or something the whole night. And then they were throwing water at me. So I don't recommend 4D. But it was a lot of fun to go to a Summer Blockbuster. And I think we have to give a lot of credit to Tom Cruise and to Top Gun last year and kind of reinvigorating the Summer Blockbuster and bringing it back to the theaters after COVID and making a reason for people to go back. So I give a lot of credit to that movie. But I'm going to do my top 5 blockbusters since I started going to the movies way back in 1983 when I went to my first movie as a 3-year-old boy. So here we go. Number 5, June 5th, 1988, the release of The Truman Show by Jim Carrey. I was a senior in high school. I had about 1 or 2 weeks of high school left. My high school girlfriend and I, we went to the movies on a Friday night. This is when Jim Carrey movies were an event. Basically, every movie after Ace Ventura, I always went the first Friday. Went the first day that The Mask came out. Went the first day that Dumb and Dumber came out. Went the first day that Majestic came out. I was a huge Jim Carrey fan back in the day. And I think if you ask me what's the best Jim Carrey movie, I would say, hold on. Do you want to know the best or the funniest? Because the funniest is Dumb and Dumber, but the best is The Truman Show. An unbelievable movie that really made me think about life in a way I never had before. And it was a big, huge summer Jim Carrey release. And it made $264.1 million in the box office. I don't think these numbers are adjusted for inflation. I think that's what they made at the time. So adjusted for inflation, it would be a lot more. Truman Show, a brilliant movie with Jim Carrey. If it was, a great movie. Number 4, Forrest Gump, July 6, 1994. I remember the day I went to see it. Went in the afternoon. Went with my uncle and my aunt, my mom's brother and sister. They were living together in a house on Sable Palm in Cheektowaga. And I had a baby cousin who was 3 at the time, but she was elsewhere that day. So the 3 of us went and watched the movie. Now, this was summer of 94, which was a wild summer because that was the OJ summer when like the NBA finals were going on right about now. So the NBA finals are going on. This is like the week before that or so. Yeah. Oh no, this is July. So the next one. So a couple weeks later, right after 4th of July, after all that OJ stuff had happened, and we went to a vacation. My uncle and I, we were just chilling that night, getting ready to go on vacation the next day, watching the NBA finals when the OJ chase happened. So a wild summer for me. It's one I look back to right before I started high school. And I remember going to see this and really being blown away by it. and really enjoying it. And it's a polarizing movie. I think you either love it or hate it. And it made $678.2 million. An unbelievable release for Forrest Gump. Tom Hanks won the Oscar for it. And he won for Philadelphia as well the year before, I believe. So a great time for Tom Hanks, a really fun movie. And who knew that, that he was such a great football player and t-shirt designer and bumper sticker maker, that nut Forrest Gump. So rest in peace to Jenny and to Mama. Number 3, and this one, I think of all Hollywood blockbusters, I think there's kind of 2 in my mind. The summer blockbuster that I think that's the one. And this is one of those 2. I'll tell you the other one later. I kind of did my favorites here with the 5 because there's so many movies that could have been on this list. But Jurassic Park had to be on this list. This was one of those movies, Steven Spielberg, that was, in the Happy Meals with the toys, and merchandise was everywhere and buzz was everywhere. I went the first day to the Galleria Mall to see it. They were running it on like 8 different screens every half an hour. The whole mall was packed. Everyone ate lunch in the food court. It came out on June 11th, 1993. Again, right at the end of school. I was finishing 7th grade, going into 8th grade, I believe. Yeah, that makes sense. Finishing 7th, going into 8th. And I went with my friend. We got dropped off at the mall, rode up the escalators, ate lunch at Taco Bell in the food court, and went to Jurassic Park. And I remember the craziest thing was they had people waiting at every door of the theater to make sure you were going into the right movie, because it was literally up at like every screen and every half an hour. So they were checking your ticket to make sure you went in the right door. $1.02 billion Jurassic Park made. And this is the definition of summer blockbuster. You're like, what are you talking about with this list? This is what I'm talking about. Another one I'm talking about, Back to the Future, July 3rd, 1985, $389.1 million. Now, my dad and I went to this movie. Wasn't on opening day, but it was the first or second week. We went to see Back to the Future. And this changed my life for movies. Like, I had never seen a movie as perfect as Back to the Future, with one exception, which we'll talk about in a minute. But Back to the Future was it was a different level. Zemeckis and, everyone behind this movie did an incredible job. And a funny story is then when 2 came out, 2 and 3 came out not that far apart. And me and my dad went to go see 3, but they were also showing 2 in the movie theaters at the same time. I guess maybe they re-released it in the theaters. And we went and we were waiting for a Western movie to start. And we realized we're in 2. So we had to go over to 3. And my dad's car got broken into at the mall that day. So crazy day. But Back to the Future, what a film. Still watch it to this day. Paula watches it and loves it. And she definitely loves the next movie as well. My number 1, released in June 22nd, 1984. The greatest movie for a boy growing up. I worked in the Buffalo Public Schools for a while and taught kids. During the summer, I would do this summer program. And part of the summer program, there was a boys only and girls only curriculum. And teaching the boys only curriculum, the first movie that came to mind to show them, and I did it every summer, was this one. Back to the Future at number 2, number 1, The Karate Kid. June 22nd, 1984. Mr. Miyagi and Daniel's son. I mean, what a story about being an underdog, being in a new school, being bullied, getting the girl, chasing and getting the girl. Just an unbelievable story about growing up, and just one of the best. It's still my favorite movie of all time. I love Goodfellas, and I love some more adult movies as well. But there's never not like a time where Back to the Future isn't in my mind or in my life. Like, I watch it all the time, and Cobra Kai has been such a blessing to expand the world. Although there's a negative to that. Now idiots don't like Daniel-san. Look, if you think Daniel-san's the bad guy in this movie, you're an absolute idiot. But what an unbelievable film. What a rite of passage for any guy or any girl to watch the story of growing up, moving across the country. Daniel-san's mom moves him across the country for a job in computers, and we're not even 10 minutes into the movie, and she's a hostess at a restaurant. And he's getting his ass kicked, and then he meets Mr. Miyagi, who fixes his bike and changes his life and teaches him karate. And he walks out of the movie with the trophy and with Allie with an eye. What a film. That's my list. Top 5 summer blockbusters. Number 5, Truman Show. Number 4, Forrest Gump. Number 3, Jurassic Park. Number 2, Back to the Future. And number 1, I wanted to mention some honorable mentions because there's so many damn summer blockbusters. I also want to mention Big, Saving Private Ryan, Independence Day, Top Gun, Jaws, A League of Their Own, Batman Returns, Ghostbusters, and Men in Black are also some of the great summer blockbusters of all time. But that's the show for today. 3x5 with Steve Bennett. 3 lists every week. We're going to try to do it every 7 to 10 days. Hopefully do 3 a month. I want to thank everyone at the Sportscasters Podcast, everyone at the 24-inch Podcast. I want to thank the people here at North-South Connection. I want to encourage you to join me on Twitter at sports_cast. You can see it on the screen there. And with all that said, I think that's it. We'll be back in 7 to 10 days or so. Check the North-South YouTube page. Like, subscribe, do all those things. Comment, tell me your lists. That's going to be the most fun part about this, is sharing lists. And my future, my outlook for the future is to include other people's lists, to have guests even who want to share lists, to read lists from the listeners. Follow me on Twitter, because I'm going to maybe ahead of time say, hey, this week on the show, we're covering this list. What's yours? And I'll solicit lists from friends and guests formerly of the Sportscasters, and maybe we'll even get a list from Paula as well once in a while, or whoever. But I'd love to read your list. So at sports_casters, you can always email me, sportscasters@gmail.com as well. Check out, I was on the North-South Connection video page the other day. Ryan and Keithy and I did a tribute to the life of the Iron Sheik, and that's up on the page. Check that out. And even Paula made an appearance there, even though she did kind of choke and freeze up. So, but she says next time. All right, the music's playing. I gotta go. I'm out. See you next time. Bye now.